It is the Practical Prayer Podcast on New Thought Media Network. I'm Bill, and that's Carol, and we're in the pre-show now. So this is the live studio audience section. We're going to chat about what we're going to chat about when we start chatting during the podcast recording, which will be in 5 minutes or so. And you're invited to participate along. If there's a question, you can put it in the comment on your social media, or you can go to bethelight.com, be-the-light.com. And you can put in a question or a prayer request or a suggestion. And we may do as we're told. And we may not. Because that's what we do.
The suggestions are... That's a bold thing to put out there, because you don't know what you're going to get. But it's cool because you get to see it before.
Yeah.
It's not live.
And we back here is where we're making the sausage. And I periodically will share some of the tricks that we used when I was on the radio. And I learned a lesson when I I started in major market radio, and then I moved to small market radio. Mm-hmm. And you do a contest, and you say, well, take caller number 27. And you put all of the phones on hold, and then you just start counting through and get the 27th call. And it doesn't matter because the calls always come in. And then I was at this little tiny radio station in the middle of nowhere. And I said, we're going to take caller number 107. And like 45 minutes later, somebody calls and said, I think you probably be up to about 107 now. It's like, oh, man, those tickets are long gone. I didn't mean I was going to count to 107.
Yeah.
I was just saying.
Well, so what were you doing? You weren't counting.
I was making stuff up. No, I wasn't taking it that seriously. And here you can make any suggestions that you want. You can ask any questions that you want. May answer them directly, may answer them on the air, may paraphrase them on the air. And Carol, as you have noticed, I might change the subject. I might say, that's a really good question, and then give you an answer for a different one.
No, that never happened, did it?
No, I never do that.
All right. But I used to think I could manage that. I just let it go.
No, and when we don't tether ourselves to what we thought we were going to do, we actually allow a lot of flexibility for something fun to happen. And fun that has been all the way along. I think we're counting up. This is going to be episode number 96. When it gets on the air. 96 weeks. What have you done?
Yeah. So 96 means weeks.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And I think we had 8 or 12 of them in the can before we started publishing. But then we dumped a whole bunch to begin with so that we would have a season to start with on the air. The other thing that I noticed, today is the 13th of March, 2023. And in Philadelphia, which is where I am, the pandemic lockdowns started at the end of the day on March 12th of 2020. So we are just past 3 full years of this glee with the pandemic. So, so we just have stories of what's your life like? Well, okay, there's a before story and an after story. Mm-hmm. And the pandemic gave us all the framework for having the same before and after story. Well, before the pandemic, I used to do this, that, and the other thing. And then I spent 3 years on the couch, or 2, or whatever it was.
I think some people are probably still there.
Yeah. I'm getting out more now than I had, but we have some immune compromised people in the family, so they're very pragmatic about going to noisy bars and piano sing-alongs and choirs and things like that. So
we are forever changed because of that. And I just think about it every time I go out. Some people have masks and some don't. I actually wear my mask, and I was thinking the other day, you're just so accustomed to it. You just flip it on and just go and don't think about it. Some people do, some people don't. It's just that it changed us forever. And the fallout of the change, and this is totally another direction, but the emotional, mental, effects of it, we're not going to see for a while. I mean, I think we're peeping a little bit of it now, but I think it's a whole lot more than we might have imagined, if people imagined it at all.
Yeah, well, when something happens to somebody, you can watch what happened to them. And when there's a group of people that something happens to, you can kind of aggregate what happens to them. But we went through a year or 2 or 3 of everybody being affected the same way at the same time and losing all of our moorings, all of our connections, anchor points. And so everybody is adrift at the same time. And it's going to take a while to see what happens when that tide goes out and where we've drifted to.
Yeah. So, I mean, we lost people. That's the big thing. One of the big things. And there's nothing to be said. We just have to pick up our lives and start with new stuff.
Yep. I've been to some funerals and memorial services, and very few of them were about COVID. I mean, there were some, but life goes on and death goes on, and the machine continues to work. Just works different. Yeah. So you want to do a podcast?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, and we're going to talk about enlightenment. Ooh. I can't wait to see what we mean. So I'm going to go ahead and click the button, and when we come back, we will be recording the Practical Prayer Podcast.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
I am looking forward to our conversation today. You used one word on me. And we're going to spend...
What I thought about, I said, well, that's just one word. And I thought, have we ever done just one word before? Probably.
Probably. You want me to go through and look at them?
No, that's all right.
I think last week was sin, but this week's more fun. This week is enlightenment.
I've been thinking about sin all week, and it's not that bad. Oh, you know what? I did not mean that the way it sounded. Everybody who's listening, I didn't mean it that way. Just, it's not as bad as people. Never mind. Let's just talk about enlightenment.
Yeah. Listen to last week's episode, and we'll talk about enlightenment. So enlightenment is another one of those really fun ones because it means different things and is perceived differently by different people. And I jokingly said to you, do you know what to do if you meet somebody who tells you that they're enlightened? And the answer is to run away as quickly as you can. Because people who are actually enlightened don't really talk about it. It's when their friends tell you that they're enlightened, or their group of followers sees them as being enlightened, and then it becomes common knowledge, then those are the way showers and the avatars and the people who are enlightened who are going to demonstrate and show us something, maybe teach us something, or at least let us learn something. But man, if somebody comes in saying that they're enlightened, it is a sales pitch. I'm enlightened. I don't think you are. If you were enlightened, you wouldn't have to say it.
It's like, well, I'd love to ask those people, what do you mean by that? Because
when they say that they're enlightened?
Yes. When I became aware of it, feels like eons ago, I wanted to know, how do I get enlightened? And when will I know that I'm enlightened? And what I need to do? And my answer to everything is, you got to study and learn about it.
That's right. You got to work. You love to work.
You've got to learn about it. And so whatever I read, I go back a step. Like whatever I read and the person recommended or said they read this, I read that. So you can go back forever and ever, which is a wonderful thing. But you have to wonder if you ever get the answer. You have to get the answer for yourself. So I hear this a lot, and in broadcasts and podcasts, people are enlightened, and well, what is that? I have my opinion, but I want to ask you because you're the genius. So
that's another one when somebody claims that for themselves to run away. And let me change that. Enlightened is something that we are all striving toward in our own way, and it's a path. And the reason for the joke is if somebody tells you that they're enlightened, what they're saying is that they have been climbing this path of enlightenment, and they've reached the top of the mountain, and they're standing there and they're owning it. And the fact is, we're all on a spiritual journey of enlightenment. So I can look at Carol, and Carol can look at me, and know that we're each more enlightened than we used to be, and we're on that path toward enlightenment, or of continued enlightenment, even though we haven't reached the destination yet. And that's just fine. We are on our way, and we're climbing. It is completely possible that Carol's internet has frozen, and I'm just going to get to keep on talking and talking and talking. Are you able to hear me, Carol? Nope, Carol just disappeared. So I'm going to fill for a moment until Carol gets back. And for those of you who are watching on New Thought Media Network or listening to the recording or the live stream rather than the podcast episode, this is the part that's going to get edited out by the production team. So I'm going to go back to talking about what enlightenment is or isn't, what it could be or could not be. On the spiritual path, we're all climbing a mountain, and we talk about different religions, and we're all climbing the same mountain, and that's the mountain of spiritual awareness or enlightenment, and we have different paths. So Christianity and Judaism have slightly different paths, and Islam has a different path, and the Aboriginal religions and Eastern religions have different paths, but they're all climbing the same mountain, and we are all seeking that same enlightenment. And when we get to the top, it's the same for all of us. It is the awareness of our connection with the oneness in the universe, and that winds up being the goal and the destination. And we get to be okay with not reaching that goal or destination on our own, ever. It's not about the destination. It's about the path. It's about the progress. It's about taking each step and moving up that path, up that mountain toward enlightenment. And it's not something that you can say what it's going to look like when you get there, because we don't know, because we're not enlightened. And the people who are enlightened, who aren't claiming it for themselves, but when the folks around them notice that this person really has it going on, and you can feel the energy. When somebody's got a very high level of consciousness, of spiritual awareness and growth, you can feel it when they come into the room. And things change, and you get quiet, and you listen to them. I've been around a few people who are like that, and they just exude this energy, this feeling of spiritual confidence and consciousness, and that enlightenment that they're displaying. The more evolved they get, it seems to me, the less they talk about how evolved they are, and the more they talk about just the love unfolding and the awareness of goodness. And Carol is now back. So
I'm back.
You took a little break.
Here, if the wind blows, the connection goes. I don't know what that is. It's raining here, so I can expect. I forgot that it was raining because I could have said so ahead of time. But if the wind blows and there's a little moisture in the air, bang, you're down. So I'm back.
So you're back.
I'm back.
So I did a little vamping and filling, and what I was talking about was that the enlightenment is the basically Spiritual growth and enlightenment is about a mountain. And we are all climbing up the mountain, and we're all taking different paths up the mountain. And different religions have different paths or different sides of the mountain, but it's the same mountain. And eventually, when we get to the top, it's the same place for everyone. And the people who have climbed the mountain, who are at the top or near the top, they can't really explain to us how they did it, because somewhere along the path of enlightenment, it goes from being an action step to a feeling step to a faith step to a believing step, or so I understand it. And they're much less interested in explaining to other people how they did it, other than to encourage them up the mountain as well. Don't follow my footsteps.
And I'm listening when you were going through the steps, and I thought about how you say, I don't have a problem with work. I like work, or that's my idea. I was thinking, that's a lot of work. It's a lot. And I don't see that as real hard work. It's just becoming. It's to me, it's setting your intention to become the best you that is possible to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that changes by the day, because we do the best we can with what we've got available to us at the time. So I may not be as enlightened today as I was yesterday. The circumstances may be different, and so it's one of those things that I kind of, and listen to me say this, I'm talking about, I'm a person that believes in work, but I don't think you can work and do it. It's about growth and the evolving of your awareness of things,
Mm-hmm.
and a broader awareness of things, because people can be aware in a box, and they're just aware of everything that's in that box and assume that that's all there is. But just being aware of more, you're enlightened every day.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a peak, a plateau, so that you say, I am enlightened? I don't know about that.
Well, the stories that we've heard about the enlightened beings, they spend a fair amount of their time meditating and in prayer and in service and perhaps doing some teaching. And the more enlightened they get, the less involved they want to be with day-to-day life, and the more they just want to be meditating. So I'm tired of the teaching, and I want to just meditate and be. And gurus are that way. They're being tended to by their followers, and they're able to spend their time doing their guru stuff without being distracted by the mundane stuff in the world around them. And that's kind of awesome. It's less and less likely that they're going to be able to tell us how they got there or how we're going to be able to get there, which I think is probably why religions get made up and named after these really enlightened avatars. These, the Buddha and Jesus and Moses and Muhammad. They're the ones who invented religions because they were so connected. People around them really knew what was going on, and they said, "Ooh, he's doing it right. Let's follow his footsteps." And thinking that if we put our feet in the same positions, that we're going to get to the same place that the master got. And we might, or we might not. But it's not going to be because we're putting our feet that way. It's because moving our feet that way and allowing our consciousness to grow is what lets that new level of consciousness in.
So the way you described it, I'm probably not there yet with my understanding of it, because I can imagine being tired or not interested in the stuff around us, the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I am embarrassingly not interested in so much you would have no idea. But it's a little embarrassing to say because it's not the acceptable attitude to have. However, it just went out there on the, in the cyberspace that Carol has little interest in a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean that I'm enlightened? Well, according to your definition, I would have to say no, because I haven't lost my desire or energy to give or to serve. And I'm wondering if that's a place to be. If I'm so deep and in the space of knowing that I can't give and share and help others get to that place, if I can be so arrogant as to say that I am at that place.
Hmm.
I'm not sure that I even want that.
Yeah. And you're working your program. There are things that are attracting your attention that you are putting your all into, and there are other things that attract other people's attention and has no interest for you because it's not feeding what your soul is looking for. And that's just fine. You talk about doing the work. I used to have a pretty consistent meditative practice, and it was mostly every day. And then some number of years ago, I found an app that seemed to fit in with what I wanted to, the kind of practice I wanted to do. And it lets you, set a timer, and this is how long I'm going to meditate for today. And it's called, cleverly, Insight Timer, which you've probably heard of. And so I started doing my 15-minute daily meditation on Insight Timer. And my commitment was I'm just going to do 15 minutes on Insight Timer. And I started doing that, and I did it every day. And I did it every day for the better part of a year, and then I missed a day. And I was very sad. Because I didn't want to admit that I'd missed a day, but I also knew that I really didn't want to claim that I did a meditation that I didn't. So I started over again. And it's about just doing the work, about being present and being persistent, because my Insight Timer is now 1,780 days in a row. And that's since the day that I missed. There's another couple hundred on top of that that I know of for myself. And it's not that day number 2,000 is going to be any different or any more spectacular than day number 14. But that's the consistency. And along the way, things change. I can listen to tracks on Insight Timer if I want to, or I can listen to music and I can change the background music. And it's gotten to the point where I just turn the timer on and I don't have the background sound going at all. So it's just me and waiting for the gong to ring. And that's the place where I can be centered and peaceful. And then I notice from day to day that sometimes I'm really in the groove. I'm just so present and in that meditative space. And other days, my laundry list goes through my head like one of those little wind tunnel machines where they put the contestant in and try and grab the $1 bills. Just swirling all over the place and won't stop. And sometimes I fall asleep. And I can congratulate myself or beat myself up for any of those or not. The important part for me is that I stay at it, and 15 minutes or however much additional it's going to be, I get up and I go about my day, and the next day I do it again. That's what I'm talking about being on the path and taking the steps.
And it's about consistency, because when you first introduced the thought of it, the timer and all that, I read every morning, and I have a pretty disciplined practice.
When you say pretty disciplined practice, other people would think of that as being in lockstep.
Yeah, well, it works. It works so much that when I'm out of step, it feels like my life isn't working, and I'll look back and say, wait a minute, I am not, I pull, maybe it's a gauge I use to pull myself in step. But anyway, I also use ebooks. So Amazon tells me how many days I've read. And they'll even have prizes and whatever. And in the beginning, I was feeling really good because I was slamming. I was getting prizes. I was getting money. And they were giving me $3. It may have been 300,000. I got $3 to go get another book or put on another book. And then after a while, the prizes and so forth really weren't the thing. And I still rack them up because that's part of...
That's what you do.
Well, you're in it and they send you an email and sometimes, often, I don't know how many points I have and I've missed the money because you got to buy a book by such and such time. But it's not, as soon as I released myself from having to do it and looking for the number and just, this is what I do, it became a part of my life. And I call it a discipline practice because I want me to remember that that's what I do. Maybe it's a play on words for me. But I do that, and there have been times when my world isn't, or if there's an interruption in that, I'll blame the interruption for, my world not being, listen, you got to get back to this so you can see where you're going. Maybe yes, maybe no, but that's part of my, little journey toward enlightenment. I don't know if I'll get there because I'm not sure if there is a there to get to. It's where you are and being progressively moving and being better, and I'll say that word better, but being better than before you knew, before you were aware of certain things. Is that fair to say?
Let's take a break, and we get to continue by talking about where we are on the path and what the next step is. Are you ready to get results? Now, that's not a rhetorical question. Are you ready to get results? RUR2GR. That's actually the abbreviation for the steps in a practical prayer. Recognition, unification, realization, gratitude, and release, with a couple of extra steps in there in case some doubt creeps in along the way. RUR2GR. This class is about the prayer technique that's common to all of the spiritual practices and religions in the most effective prayers that they have. And by effective, I mean that the prayer works. It actually creates a change in the experience of the person doing the prayer. It gets a result. We're going to begin with theory, and then we're going to take it into practice. By the end of the class, you will have your very own practical prayer that will help create transformation in your life.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer. Did I get tongue-tied there? I did. Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony.
We're talking about enlightenment today. And the part that I want to get to is being gentle and uplifting with ourselves. And this is a lesson that I learned completely by mistake. And at this point, it's got to be 20 years ago. And I'd spent a lot of my life being a perfectionist and being, quite brash and arrogant, which I'm still able to channel, thank goodness. But I found myself at the convenience store at the Wawa getting a huge soda. And at that point, the sodas that I was getting were just club soda with lemon juice in them, and rather than big syrupy Coca-Colas and whatever. And it was huge. It was 32 or 48 ounces or whatever it was. And I carried it over to the counter, and I was holding it by the top, and the top fell off, and the whole soda hit the counter and then tipped over into the cashier's area and made a big flood. And I said, wow, I wish that hadn't happened. And then I noticed that I had said to myself, and actually out loud to the cashier, I wish that hadn't happened. Whereas previously, I would have been yelling and screaming and angry and blaming and beating myself up. And instead, what I did is, I wish that hadn't happened. And it was completely true. And it was so much gentler than I normally would be with myself. And I had to look back at that, like, where'd that come from? What happened to the obnoxious guy who would have been having a hissy fit in the past? And my conclusion is that because I was continually focusing on using my language clearly and accurately, and being unattached and letting go of blame and expectations and assumptions, that it put me in the space when something happened that I didn't want to have happen. I didn't overreact. Mm-hmm. And the cashier says, yeah, this happens 3 or 4 times a day. Don't worry about it. And she had a towel back there, and she mopped it up, and away they went. And we had a little conversation about how nice it was that it was club soda with lemon juice in it rather than something disgusting.
Skip the disgusting. But, yeah, I know what that feels like because there have been, I listen. Let me use this example. This is perfect. I listen sometimes to the podcasts, just to see how it went and so forth. And I watch that sometimes my language or my communication is not smooth. And I'm saying, like, why is that, Lawrence? You were at the microphone for 30 years. Formerly, before that, you've been at the microphone for all those many years. Why is it your podcast communication is not always smooth? And it's because I'm very careful with my words, because I know that I've come from the side of the street where everything is harshly judgmental. Mm-hmm. And I always want to make sure that I'm not saying or doing or conveying that kind of idea. And I'm really aware of it because I know in your subconscious there's stuff that creeps up. Mm-hmm. And I don't want anything to creep up that I really don't mean anymore. So yes. I find myself thinking before I say a word, and it comes out a little choppy. And I thought, well, you got to fix that. And then I thought, no, I don't.
No, you don't.
Because I know why I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I don't want to hurt anybody. I look back over my career, and as much as I think I've helped and, been a positive influence on people, and thank you for those who say that, I also know that I said some things and pushed some ideas that were not helpful before I was enlightened. So, you got a little bit of enlightenment here, and then some here and some there, and all of that. But that's very important to me. And so when I'm listening to what you said, then I'm on a good track, because this is the space I am in this journey, and I know now what I didn't know before about a few things. So that's enlightenment, right?
That's right. That is your path up the mountain. That's the way that you're getting to that. And that's a wonderful guidepost. If I ever find myself saying something that I say a lot, I immediately examine it. Mm-hmm. Okay, is that actually what I mean? Are those words conveying what I mean, or what I thought I meant when I first started saying it? Mm-hmm. And in some cases, I have completely changed the way that I engage with the world, because no, what I was doing is not what I thought I was doing. I was saying things that were misguided to begin with, and the misguidingness is just continuing along. So there is always that opportunity, that invitation to examine ourselves, to look at what it is that we're saying, because that's where the first change happens. Mm-hmm. When you've been saying something for a long time, and you start thinking about what you're talking about, then, and that's what you're doing, because the reason you're sounding choppy, in my opinion, is because you're having every conversation at least twice. There's a thing you initially think about saying, and then there's the other thing that you think you want to say instead, and then you compare those two and you say, that's different. And it takes a little time to do that, and it makes it a little bit choppy.
I'm going to say it's not easy, but it's something I would do. I do it because I really, really want to do that. I really, really want to do that. Mm-hmm. And it means the world to me. I'm in, listen to this. This is crazy, but the way I'm saying it's crazy. Like, I'm in conversation with James Allen. Story for another time, but I'm in conversation with James Allen. And this guy, I had to consider the time of his writing, but this guy throws the word sin around like crazy. And I'm thinking, come on, James, I cannot do this if you're going to keep saying this word sin? And to me, it's worth taking the time to unravel and to figure out what he means and what he would say today instead.
Right.
It's a good work to do, because so many, that one word, not just sin, we talked about that last week, but there are others, I'm sure, that have a little, connotation, little stuff, little baggage that comes with it that could be very destructive to people and hinder their journey to enlightenment also.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard work, but you know what? I feel like it's my work to do because I'm privileged to know this. I remember when I was in the very, very first class for practical prayer, and we got to the the gratitude step, and I'm thinking, okay, so I gotta be, grateful for, and your explanation was so empowering to me. You said the gratitude does not have to be about the subject of the prayer. The gratitude can be about anything.
Yep.
Anything. And that just changed my whole world. You have no idea, just those few words, because that gratitude that you feel at that moment is absolutely eternally good in all situations, no matter what's going on. And it made everything different. So I'm not going to go on that rabbit trail, but but the thing about enlightenment, it's that I get to a certain place and I'm so grateful that I know that this work for me to do to make sure that my language is clean and life-giving and not death-dealing language.
Mm-hmm.
I am grateful that I lived long enough to get to the place to know that there is a difference. And I've said to Spirit, however anybody believes it, I really want to live long enough to appreciate this, what I have discovered more, because I lived so long in the other place. And no, really, no disrespect, but I'm so grateful to know this. If you say it's a level of enlightenment, okay, fine. I'm grateful to have had a little couple of steps toward enlightenment. And that's how I see it. It's like an ongoing journey. And I don't think I can get to the place where I would say I am enlightened. I guess that's cool, maybe when you described it like gurus and stuff, maybe if I get to that place, then I could say I'm enlightened and I don't want to. But right now I can't see not serving.
Yeah. And that's the perfectly reasonable, and continue doing that. And the people who are particularly enlightened, who I've come across, and like I said, there have been a few of them, they tend to hang around with people who call them enlightened, and they don't disagree.
Okay.
Here's our wise and enlightened guru. And they start, it's been introduced, and they start talking. Because they know who they're talking about. And, okay, that's what you're going to call me. That's fine. But they're not printing up business cards that say enlightened guru, and trying to get themselves booked on podcasts and TV shows to speak on behalf of enlightened gurus everywhere. So that's not what the gig is. It's about being present in our own spiritual journey. The Buddha say, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water.
Exactly.
So the thing that changes is the enlightenment. Let's do another break, and I want to do a prayer on the path of enlightenment, not the path to enlightenment, but the path of enlightenment, because I think there's a difference.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marchiony's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marchiony, having a great conversation.
Yeah, we've been talking about enlightenment. And the big takeaway for me is that there's a difference between being enlightened and being on the path to enlightenment. And when it comes to enlightenment, we're all either on the path or at the very least have the opportunity to be on the path. There are times when the path to enlightenment has been illuminated before me, and I have been steadfastly looking in a different direction. Once I started to take this seriously, however, I started focusing on my own consciousness and uplifting my consciousness and being in that more loving, harmonious, enlightened space. And it's kind of addictive because it makes everything else in my life easier and more fun and more enjoyable and less worrisome. And so sign me up and keep going. It's a path that's successful, that's effective, that's what's working for me. Even though I have no commitment to reaching the top of the mountain to the point where I am enlightened and have no further room to grow or to evolve in consciousness. That's, to me, not the point. If it happened, would I be okay with that? Yeah, I would take that avatar level enlightenment, but that's not why I'm doing it. And that's not what the prayer is about. The prayer today is about being where we are on our conscious journey, or our journey in consciousness, on the path of enlightenment, and taking the next step to allow the practice that we're involved in to bring us a greater awareness of that infinite truth. And the infinite truth is really simple. We can say it very simply. There is one power, love, intelligence, or force that creates everything, including each of us. And as we become even more fully aware of that one, we have the opportunity to live our lives as an expression of that one. If that's all there is, then that's what we are. And the experience of enlightenment, the path of enlightenment, is becoming more and more aware of that. So in this prayer, we can close our eyes and turn our attention away from everything else, all the details in the world around us. Yes, they are there. Yes, they are relevant. They are important. It is nice to know where the car is parked and what our home address is and where we left the car keys. All of that stuff is really important. And it's just details. All of it, including us, is that one divine presence taking its own particular form. There is only the one. Call it spirit, call it God, call it nature, call it the big happy coincidence, whatever it is. There is one big happy coincidence that has been unfolding and revealing and evolving and expressing itself in different ways for as long as there has been awareness. That one is sharing itself right here and right now, as each of us individually and as all of us together. That limitless good that exists everywhere is available to each of us. That awareness of the truth, of the love that we are, is available to each of us in an even richer, fuller, and more vibrant way. So the process of stepping into that higher awareness, of allowing our consciousness to evolve to that next highest level, that is the path of enlightenment. It is not a destination, it is a journey. And that feeling of knowing, of connection with the infinite, knowing that we are not just expressions of it, but we are it in expression. We are that divine power and presence taking form right here and now. And our path of enlightenment is more fully owning that truth, more clearly, more honestly, more joyously in every moment. And that good that's always available continues to flow into our lives. We can block it, we can stop it, we can turn away from it, but as we open to it, it is there. And that path of enlightenment is always available, and we are free to take that next step, and that next step, and that next step. So I know that we're each letting loose our attention, our concern for how long it's going to take to get to the end of this path. It's walking the path. It's doing the steps. That's the important part. And each one is taking the next step, doing what's ours to do, letting go of what has turned out to no longer serve us, and to invite in that experience of enlightenment more richly and more fully with every moment and every breath. And that infinite creative power that creates everything, that divine mind that knows everything, that one presence that shares itself as everything and as each of us, is responding now. It is moving us along the path. It is opening up new possibilities. And the love is at hand. And I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the way this is happening. I'm grateful for the uplift that each one of us is experiencing. And I'm grateful to be able to speak this word and release it into that same creative law that's created everything. To know it's now creating this next newness for each of us. And so with this deep feeling of thanks, I speak this word and I release it into that creative law, and I know without any question whatsoever that this is already underway. It is already so. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marchiony and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
Where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit,
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
That was quite a whirlwind.
I think that was good.
Thank you. I think David is going to have some work to do editing out the the false starts and the missing pieces.
Yeah, I see some things happening, and I know it's the wind out there.
The wind. Oh.
It doesn't even have to blow hard. It just has to blow right. Whatever right is.
Do you know what direction it blows from in order for your internet to go out?
I have no idea, because there's sometimes the wind is so crazy and it seems like it's going to blow the whole place apart, and nothing happens. The internet's fine. But then there are other times it just seems like a little breeze comes by and everything just shuts down. And we have brownouts. You know what I think it is?
Go ahead.
It's because I live in a senior community and they think seniors don't need a whole lot of nothing. So they built these small things for people that have 2 dresses and 1 pair of shoes. They're not new. This development is not new. I think it's like 20 years old, maybe 25 years old. And that people have this perception that seniors just need a little space to breathe and sit and look. So, I need like half this place is a closet. So I was, we need to get the one next door, break the wall through, and the one downstairs.
So you're going to wind up in a duplex twin.
Well, you know what? We really thought about it. Problem is, you got to double your condo fee, right? Every time you get, so that's not a good option.
Yep. I hear you. I commiserate with you. And oh, by the way, the thought that they can make a brownout happen just to your community and not to the people down the street as well, pretty unlikely.
Well, this is a senior community. Like this community, but I mean like seniors, this is widespread. It's wonderful. You know, like a mile in each direction. I told you, I call it Old Town. Because anything a senior wants is within 1 mile, maybe 2. I got to go a little farther for a Starbucks, but for the most part, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the electric grid is probably a little bit bigger. And browning out just the seniors is going to be a difficult thing for even a well-intentioned and very capable utility company to do.
I am going to need to be convinced.
Okay, well, I'm...
Never had this problem when I was living in the mainstream, I call it. Now.
Okay. Conspiracy theories. I'm not sure I'm going to go there.
Okay.
I do know that my 30-year-old daughter was over at my house for a while on Friday night because her electricity was out. Has nothing to do with anything. It is a data point with no information attached.
Are we supposed to be winding down on this conversation we had on enlightenment? Is this have anything to do with enlightenment?
No, and it doesn't need to. But
Okay.
because enlightenment is the sort of thing that happens when you're not paying attention. When you're doing the work and you're taking the steps and you're not particularly worried about where you're heading on your path of enlightenment, and then you suddenly realize, oh, that was a very enlightened thing for me to say. And old me never would have thought of that.
I had an experience, and I was really debating whether I was going to say this, but it doesn't matter, right? I had an experience, and there was a conversation going on, and I didn't want to get in it, so I didn't. And I thought, why don't you want to get in on it? I mean, you know, it's bubbling, and that's the conversation, and I just didn't. And I thought of many, many reasons not to engage in this conversation. And all of them had to do with spiritual principles that I've just immersed myself in and wanted to be this kind of person. And I just thought, you know what, this is the kind of conversation that will make you have to go back to square one. Probably not, but I'm just so sensitive, it seems overly sensitive, I think, to every little thing. I just don't want it. And I thought, what's the point? You know, like the conversation is bubbling and you can add your 2 cents and in a half an hour it'll be over. You'll get in the car, you'll feel like a dog. You know? So I said, okay, one point for enlightenment, that's got to be like a little kudo there. So
There you go.
yeah.
Okay. And not engaging in whatever that was going to be, probably a good idea. So congratulations.
Yeah, it was a good idea. It was just,
Congratulations.
it had no value whatsoever.
Right. I've been involved. I've been watching conversations where it's like, yeah, I could say something now, and it would interrupt the flow of the conversation, and I doubt if anybody would agree with me. And I don't need to hear myself talk because I'm having this conversation very quietly in my own head. Nobody else needs to hear it. And, just continue along.
I was out once, and people, I was trying to be social. So I'm an introvert, by the way. I'm sure you've guessed that by now. But anyway, I was making my effort to be social. And how can a pastor be an introvert? We'll talk about that some other time. But anyway, I went out, and people were so trying to make me be involved. And I was just fine. I was absolutely fine. I know what my limitations are. And I do that, and then I graciously excuse myself. So I'm sitting there, and I'm just cool. And they said, well, we're going to do this on Fridays. This is what we do. And we really would like you to join us. We know you'll have fun, and da-da-da-da. And I'm thinking, yo, just talking about it, okay. And I was polite and everything, but it wasn't happening because I didn't see any value in the event, the coming event, and they were waiting for me to say something, and it was nothing to say. Like, what do I say? I'm not coming because...
Yeah. Why can't we just say, I don't feel like it?
Yeah, but
because that's the truth. I don't feel like it. I don't want to do that.
I remember Wayne Dyer was talking about things like he'd just say, look, I'm not coming. So they pushed me, and I just said, well, I thank you for the invitation, but I will not be present.
That's right.
And then it's like everybody got quiet.
Okay. That's what happens.
That's what happens. I'm not so enlightened that I can't come. It's just that
you didn't feel like it.
It wasn't anything enlightening about the event.
Right.
And that sounds so snobbish, and I don't mean to be, but I think when you're on your way, you talked about things that happen on the way to enlightenment. It's worth being conscious of that, especially if that you have an intention or where you're trying to get to. Like I'm not letting things happen. I have intentions.
Mm-hmm.
I have
All right.
intentions.
Let us pull this to a close.
Okay.
And get off of the network so that somebody else can come in, and we will continue this next week.
Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, for your continued support. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, for your monthly contribution. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, for your monthly contribution. And please help us welcome Om Center for Spiritual Living in La Mesa, California. Thank you for your monthly donation. Thank you, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, for your most generous donation. And a special thanks to Hefferlin Foundation for your generous technology grant. And Suze Ajit, thank you for your very generous donation. And a super special thank you to Dr. Tracy Brown, RSCP. Thanks for being a super donor. And a big shout out to all our committed donors.